Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Today we're looking closely at a single, quite extensive interview featuring Tommy Robinson.
That's right. Our aim here isn't to bring in outside views or, take any kind of stance ourselves.
No, absolutely not. We're just focusing on his account as he lays it out in this specific conversation.
Think of it as looking through his perspective, based purely on what he said in this one source.
Exactly. We've gone through this interview and basically pulled out the key themes, his claims, his experiences, all directly from his words.
So our mission is really to guide you through that perspective. We'll touch on how he sees the UK, what he says about his work, the legal battles he talks about, and the personal cost he describes.
All drawn strictly from this one interview. We're presenting his narrative impartially.
Okay, let's dive in then. Starting at the beginning, how does he kind of frame his overall view? What's his take on the state of the UK right now, according to this source?
Well, he's pretty direct early on. He says the country's in a bad state.
Ah, bad state. How so?
He describes people as being fearful, even scared. And he uses some really strong terms like claiming there's an invasion happening.
An invasion.
Yeah, and he explicitly calls it population replacement.
Wow. Okay. And does he see this as just happening? Or is there more to it in his view?
No, he definitely presents it as something deliberate. He says it's organized and orchestrated.
Organized. And who does he say is behind it? Who's responsible, according to him?
He points the finger squarely at the state and the government.
Both parties.
Yes, he talks about the Tory party handing over to the Labour Party, but says they both push, quote, globalist agendas.
And these agendas.
He claims they're working totally against the interests of the British people. He even singles out Keir Starmer at one point.
Right. It's interesting. He also said something like, people can see it. They don't really know what's going on, but they feel it. What do you think he means by that, based on the interview?
It seems he's suggesting there's this sort of widespread gut feeling. People saying something's wrong, the country isn't going in the right direction maybe, even if they can't quite put their finger on why.
It's an intuition that matches his narrative.
Exactly. That they feel the effects of what he claims are these government actions against their interests.
Okay, so that's his view of the big picture. What about his own role in all this? How does he describe himself and what he actually does?
Well, he identifies himself primarily in two ways in this interview. As a documentary maker and as a journalist.
A journalist. He makes quite a claim about that, doesn't he?
He does. He calls himself the most watched journalist in Great Britain.
And he mentions specific work.
Yeah, he talks about making 8 documentaries in total.
Yeah.
And he says his latest documentary got something like 52 million views. Huge numbers, he's claiming.
But he also acknowledges that many people don't see him as a journalist. What's his reason for that, according to him?
His argument is basically that he's denied the label because he, quote, tells the truth. That he doesn't toe the line like perhaps mainstream outlets. He says he provides an alternative viewpoint.
Right, so he sees it as a consequence of his independence.
That's the picture he paints, yes.
Now, the interview talks about a specific event, a rally on July 27th. How did he describe that?
He called it a massive rally.
Mm.
Claimed 100,000 people showed up.
Wow.
And he stressed it was totally peaceful. He framed the whole thing as a celebration of British identity.
Okay, a celebration of British identity. That sounds potentially loaded. Did he define what he meant by that in this context?
Yes, and this part is quite specific in the source.
Yeah.
He defined it for the purpose of that rally, as he described it, as including everyone who's come to Britain and wants to be part of Britain.
Interesting detail. So inclusive in that specific description.
According to his words in this interview, yes.
Now, a really big part of this conversation, it seems, was about the legal challenges he's faced. He talks about being detained under the Terrorism Act at Folkestone Port.
Yeah, that's a major incident he recounts. He says he was detained under Article 7 of the Terrorism Act.
Article 7?
He claims they mention preparational acts of terrorism, but also told him they knew he wasn't actually a terrorist. It sounds quite confusing as he tells it.
And the questioning?
He says he was questioned for about 6 hours. And critically, he claims he was told he didn't have the right to remain silent.
Really? Under the Terrorism Act?
That's what he states. And that if he didn't answer truthfully, it would breach the act. He says the questions were about his lawful legal doings, including, apparently, how do you plan to stop the Great Replacement?
And his phone was involved.
Right. He says they seized his phone, but he refused to give them the PIN code.
Why?
He claims he was to protect journalistic sources. And because he refused, he says he was arrested and taken to a police station.
And he expected charges from this?
Based on his account, yes.
Mm-hmm.
He seemed to expect potential terrorism act charges related to this incident upon his return to the UK.
Okay, another huge legal issue discussed was the silenced film case. What did he say that film is actually about?
He explains it started with a story about a Syrian refugee. He claimed there was a false media narrative built around an incident involving this refugee.
And he mentioned some big media names.
Yeah, he brought up people like Sajid Javid, Piers Morgan, Jeremy Vine, saying they were part of pushing this narrative he disagreed with.
So what did he do that led to the court case?
He says he investigated the original incident himself, made a video, basically telling people, look, don't donate money, you've been lied to.
Okay.
And after that, he says the court proceedings started. He calls it lawfare.
Lawfare, meaning?
He claims the goal wasn't justice, but to silence him and his associates, specifically to bankrupt them.
And the case itself involved a child? Bailey McLaren.
Yes, he goes into a lot of detail there, recounting this child's alleged experiences, even an attempted suicide. He describes his own investigation for the film, like using hidden cameras on teachers who he alleges were paid off by the council not to speak, and also recording a mother who he claims lied in a statement because of threats. Very serious allegations he makes.
And the outcome of that case?
He lost, flat out. He claims the judge's decision went against every bit of evidence. He also says the judge ordered witnesses, including children, to be named publicly. He argued strongly against this, citing safety concerns, linking it to previous grooming scandals in that area.
And the consequence of the ruling?
An injunction was issued. He was forbidden from showing the film, facing potential prison time if he did.
So what was the impact of all this on him? He must have talked about that.
Oh, definitely. He states very clearly, it bankrupts me.
Financially ruined.
That's the claim. He also says it led to his divorce, separation from his family, and caused immense mental distress.
But the film did get out eventually.
He says it was released in America, but claims it was initially without his consent. But then he showed it himself. At that July 27th rally he mentioned earlier, he played the film.
Despite the injunction.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that, he says the Attorney General, the government, brought contempt of court charges against him.
So more prison time looming.
Potentially, yes. He claims he was facing a possible 4 years in total if he returned to the UK. 2 years for the initial leak via interviews, he says, and 2 years for playing it at the rally.
Did he plead guilty?
He says he pleaded not guilty to the charges, but readily admits playing the film. He actually states he has total contempt for Justice Nicklon's ruling. Doesn't mince words there.
Right. Now, the interview also brought up this concept of two-tier policing. What's his argument there, especially related to things like the October 7th events?
His claim is essentially that different groups get treated very differently by the police.
How so?
He says certain groups, he doesn't always specify who, but implies pro-Palestinian or Islamist groups, in this context, get treated with kid gloves.
While others,
like him and his supporters, face an iron fist. That's his phrasing.
and he gave examples.
Yeah, he cites things he witnessed, like what he calls Hamas rallies or calls for jihad happening in London, with perceived police inaction.
And he contrasts that with
His own arrests, being banned from London, banned from protests, and also, he claims, others being prosecuted just for words or for sharing memes during riots.
And he thinks the public sees this alleged difference.
Yes, he claims the public watched this disparity unfold and that the phrase two-tier policing's come part of British vocabulary now. He sees it as a widely recognized issue.
Okay, let's shift focus again. He talks about another big project, the Rape of Britain documentary series. What's the subject matter there, according to him?
This series, as he describes it, is all about investigating grooming gangs and child sexual exploitation in different UK towns.
Right. And what does he claim his investigation involved?
He says he spent a long time on it, like 12 to 18 months, looking into towns like Telford and Rotherham specifically. Interviewing victims, he says, building up a database of names of alleged perpetrators. And he makes some strong claims about official failings.
Such as?
Allegations of corrupt police officers getting rid of evidence, deleting things, cases somehow getting lost in the system.
Does he give any numbers?
He does. In the interview, he claims they identified 254 names in Telford, alleging that maybe 20–30% of Muslim men there were involved. And he references the figure of 1,400 children in Rotherham, which is a number associated with the official report, though his framing is specific.
And he emphasizes the danger involved in this work.
Very much so. He talks about threats against his family, houses being set on fire, police inaction when he reports these things. He even describes his methods for confronting alleged perpetrators or people associated with them.
Did he say he tried to work with authorities?
He claims the police refused to meet with him to even look at the evidence they said they'd compiled.
And the reception to the series?
He expresses frustration, finding it disheartening that it hasn't received widespread media attention.
Does he talk about the motivations of the perpetrators he alleges?
Yes. Based on what he says he heard in court statements,
Yeah.
he links their actions directly to their culture and their religious beliefs.
The interview also touches on his relationships, or perhaps lack thereof, with other public figures. What's the story with Nigel Farage?
Well, he says he used to be a big supporter.
But not anymore.
Now, he claims Farage started lying about me and kicking us when we're down. The main accusation seems to be that Farage smears him, calling him far right.
And this extends to Farage's party, Reform.
Yes, he claims Reform removes candidates if they speak out in his defense, and that they have a policy against anyone linked to the English Defense League, the EDL.
Which he founded. How does he defend the EDL in the interview?
He pushes back hard against the idea that it was racist or far right. He claims that was branding done by the media and police. He points to diverse divisions within the EDL back then, Jewish, lesbian, gay, Sikh, Hindu divisions, he claims.
Okay. What about Jordan Peterson? He interviewed him, right?
Yes. He explains how that came about. Apparently, he had trouble traveling to Canada.
Right.
And he claims Peterson stepped in, unhappy with what he saw as the Canadian government's attempt to silence anyone.
So Peterson facilitated it.
That's his account.
Yeah.
And he says the resulting interview got millions of views.
Any other figures he mentions prominently?
Yes. He speaks very highly of Donald Trump, calls him our last hope to save Western civilization.
Strong words.
Indeed. He also gives credit to Elon Musk and X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
For what?
For allowing his content to stay up, basically. For standing for freedom of speech, in his view.
And the media in general.
Very negative portrayal. He calls the media a tool of the totalitarian state, even the cancer.
So all these interactions, these views on figures and platforms, they seem to tie back into his main narrative.
Absolutely. It all reinforces his story of fighting a corrupt control system that's trying to silence dissent and is working against the public interest, as he sees it.
Finally, let's talk about the personal cost. He must have described the toll all this has taken, based on the interview.
Oh, extensively. He talks about his time in prison, saying it fucked me. He mentions a year of solitary confinement, which he claims resulted in him losing all his teeth.
That's brutal. And the mental health side?
He describes feeling broken, exhausted, tired, saying the pressure drove me to a point of insanity. He talks about crying in rehab, facing deep fears about the establishment and what could happen to his family.
And you mentioned the family strain earlier.
Yes, the divorce, the separation, the threats he claims they received. It's presented as a huge personal sacrifice.
And the financial side again, you mentioned bankruptcy.
Right. He reiterates being bankrupted, having no money. He also claims banks have closed his accounts and that money raised through crowdfunding was made inaccessible to him. He frames this all as part of the tyranny against him, financial pressure as a weapon.
So, given all these challenges he describes, why does he say he keeps going? What's the motivation presented in the interview?
He says he's just stubborn, that he wants to punch back.
Punch back against?
Against the system, against those he feels wronged him and others. He talks about wanting to clear names like Bailey's name, the child from the Silence case, and the names of other children from the Grooming investigations.
So exposing corruption, fighting for free speech.
That's how he frames it, yes. Fighting for freedom of speech, freedom of the press, exposing what he sees as deep-seated corruption.
And he seems optimistic about public opinion, doesn't he?
Yes, he expresses a strong belief that the public is now fully awake, or at least experiencing a mass awakening to the issues he's been raising for years.
He feels his message is getting through.
He claims his voice is louder than ever. He throws out a figure like a 1.7 billion people reach. Whether that's verifiable is another matter, but it's his claim in the source.
And he has future plans, he mentioned.
Definitely. Releasing more episodes of the Rape of Britain series. Organizing more demonstrations. He mentioned dates like October 26th, June 1st, July 27th again.
And how does he frame those events? As peaceful, as patriotic, aimed at winning the hearts and minds of the world and the British public. He makes a point, actually, of saying violence is counterproductive to his cause. So, quite a journey through this single interview. We've covered Tommy Robinson's perspective as he presented it here on the state of the UK, his own identity and work, the very significant legal battles he detailed, his claims about grooming gangs, and the huge personal impact he says all this has had.
Yeah, it's a complex narrative presented entirely from his viewpoint within this one source. It gives you a really deep look into the specific claims he makes, the motivations he states, and the intense conflicts, legal, personal, societal, that he describes himself being at the center of.
I suppose a key theme running through his account here is this belief he's fighting for truth, for free speech, against powerful forces, no matter the personal cost he says he's incurring.
That certainly comes across very strongly in his words throughout this interview, yes.
So, a final thought for you listening to this account drawn just from this one interview. Considering the array of challenges Robinson describes facing legal action, financial pressure, personal threats, simply for speaking out and pursuing his particular form of journalism and activism as he tells it, what does his narrative, as presented here, suggest to you about the current climate for free speech and activism today? See you soon.